What's up, YouTube? Today I'm going to show you how to upgrade your fuel tank on your Champion generator. This particular model has got like a 1.5 gallon tank, which, you know, when you're trying to run it all night, it will be dead by the middle of the night. So anyways, this will work for the 3400 watts, the 3100 watts, as long as they are not the dual fuel. I'm not an expert in this, but just from what I've read online, for whatever reason, this method will not work with the dual fuel. So coming over here, I got to give props to this guy, Pinellas Power Products. You can buy all the materials on this gentleman's website. I believe it'll give you everything but the fuel tank. He doesn't send you the fuel tank just because different people want different sizes. He wants 260 bucks for it, and here is the exact URL. I'll try to leave it in the description. Anyhow, like I said, props to this guy. I don't want to take away from his business, so this is, if you guys are thinking about it, I would definitely check him out. He has a YouTube video that's very informative online. I'm just hoping to you know, answer some questions that I know I had when I was doing it. And there's the URL for his YouTube video. Definitely check it out. And then when you go online, if you go to this Forest River Forums, there's a pretty good little write-up at this URL. If you scroll down, there's a version 2 of the materials needed right here. So if you download both of those, it will give you this updated parts list, which a lot of this stuff is on Amazon. And then they do some good frame by frame descriptions of what's going on. So definitely check both those out before you dive into this. The only reason why I'm making this video is because you can find a lot of this stuff around town. It was kind of tough for me, but hopefully this video will help some folks. This is while the COVID goodness is going on, so I didn't really have time to wait. My girlfriend's staying in our RV, and you know, 1.5 gallons just isn't enough to really run off of full time. So here's a quick video of the stuff that I bought, the parts that I got in town. Start with this. So I got these parts from West Marine. I'm sure you can get it at any marine store. I haven't messed around with marine stuff, so it's all totally new to me. But here's what I got. So I got a 12-gallon fuel tank. You can get them in, I think, like 3, 6. You can find some oddball sizes online, but that's what they had, and you know, go big or go home type stuff. You need 2 of these Yamaha Fuel Quick Connect fittings, and then you need 1 of these Yamaha primer bulb fuel hoses. And for those of us who are like me and don't know anything about them, these connect together just like that, or maybe they go like this. Let's see. Yeah, I bet you it goes like that. They snap together like that, and that allows you to quick connect, and so that's pretty cool. So you need 2 of those. And then you need 1 of these, you got a female, let's see, it's on the back here. No, so this is a female 5/16 national pipe thread to a 1/4 inch barb. They had that at the marine store as well. So those are all the parts that I got from the marine store. And then come over here, this is what I got from Ace. You can get these little black hose clamps near their little like nuts and bolts section, you know, where you can go through and you can get all the different sizes and all that stuff. You want something that will close around 1/2 inch. So like I said, Ace Hardware had those. Ace Hardware also had these 1/4 inch brass barb tees. From what I read online, you can get like the nylon ones from, you know, probably Ace also, or like Home Depot. But I just, you know, I like to go above and beyond. That way I won't have any issues with it. You need about 5 foot of fuel. line hose, 1/4 inch, and then you need some of this yellow tape for when you make up your connections. You need this yellow tape because it's rated for gasoline. And then I was able to find, let's see, I'll just show you that list one more time. So that's what I got from the Marine store. Here's what I got from Ace. And then these last two is the Saw Shop and Napa. So my local saw shop had this Honda 16, you know, that part number, and then a 1/4 inch inline fuel filter. Here's what it looks like. I walked in there and the guy's like, oh yeah, I know what that is. You know, it's pretty common fuel filter. So check your local saw shop for that. And then this is an inline fuel filter. You just can't see it because they put print all the way around it. This was probably the hardest thing to find. This is a 1/4 inch check valve. I went into Napa a couple times and said, hey, I need this, and they weren't able to help me. And then I talked to my mechanic buddy, and he's like, oh man, just tell him that you need a let's see what he say, a vacuum check valve for a 1988 Ford Power Stroke, you know, or no, it was a gasoline fuel distributor or something like that. Anyways, shout out to my buddy who helped me find that, because that was the last thing I needed. Here's the part number from Napa. So if you guys are like me and need to get it done quick, you can go in Napa and you can find that. So that should be all the parts that you need. And then as far as the tools, got a list here. You know, Phillips screwdriver, flathead screwdriver, needle nose pliers, something to cut fuel hose with. I got some good Milwaukee scissors that I'll probably use. 10mm socket and a ratchet to run that socket. And then this drill bit, you'll need something to drill the plastic out with. The closest one I have is a 1/2 inch, so I may have to run and get a different drill bit or something. But basically what we're going to be using the drill bit for is you're going to be drilling a hole right here, and this fuel connector is going to sit inside that plastic and just look straight down. So yeah, that's your parts and your tools that you need. If you get started, if you're like me, you'd been running this before, you may need to drain the fuel out of it. So using your flathead, or even a Phillips, you can use a Phillips there too. Pull these 2 screws out. 2 screws out, you can remove this little panel and take your Phillips and unscrew this. Well, make sure your fuel's off on the front first, and then unscrew this screw, and all your gas that's in your carb at least will drain out. That way you're not dumping a bunch on the ground. And then you have 2 Phillips head screws here and there. And then you also have 2 here and here. And then you have 2 10mm on the bottom here that are bolts that you pull out. And then when you pull this back panel out, you pull the bottom straight out and lift straight up. And then that's connected by some sort of emissions thing, I believe, right there. So it won't come apart. You just kind of have to set her aside. So just a quick pro tip, while I was trying to shove this on here because it's a pretty tight fit, this piece that like this door hangs on, you could just pop, it just slides right out. They're little. So alrighty. Then from there, we're gonna pull these 4 bolts. And these are all 10mm also. We're gonna pull these 10 bolts off, these 4 bolts off of this valve cover. So I forgot to add, before you pull those 4 bolts out, you'll need to pull this breather hose out of there. Comes out of that hole, and there's like a check valve right there that we're basically gonna install a new one on. So pull that hose out and then pull these 4 bolts. Alrighty, once you get that bad boy off, that's what she looks like over here. 2 valves. So there's 2 pieces here that we're trying to get apart. They remind the gasket, but there's another piece of metal in there that you're trying to get apart. And all you're gonna do is get you a nice hard surface, paper towel or something, and you're just gonna take this and you're gonna tap this down. We're trying to get this PCV valve out of here, this little black guy. And once you get it started to separate, take your flathead screwdriver and pry it apart. Here's what it looks like when you get it apart. Pries apart pretty easy, especially if you just kind of work nice and easy, slow around the outside of it. Anyways, you're going to take your needle nose pliers. You're going to bend this tab all the way up, and then we're going to twist this whole mechanism 90 degrees. Alrighty, here she is with the reed valve bent up, and I didn't bend it back far enough, so I actually had to roll it around just to get her to stay out of the way. And then I rotated it 90 degrees this way. Now we can go ahead and put it back together. Alrighty, and here she is back together. She's ready to go back on the engine. Don't forget your gasket, go back on. And let's see, looks like this is the upside. Okay, slap her back on. Alrighty, here she is back on. Don't forget to put this little holding bracket back on before you put this guy on. And some people might say I'm a little overkill, but I would tighten this in a crisscrossing pattern, you know, X. Oops, yeah, X, and then just kind of snug them up first, and then get them, you know, hand tight. Because I'm the king of stripping stuff, so I like to use a 1/4 inch drive ratchet so I don't strip anything out. And you can see this hole right here. That's where we'll be plumbing in that 1/4 inch check valve as your new PCV valve. All right, so the next part is you're going to come to the back side of this fuel selector knob, and you can see it. There's a hose clamp back in there that we need to pull off and pull this hose out. So hopefully you got long needle nose pliers, because I don't. Pull that off and give her a little twist on the hose as you pull. And if you're like me, you ran this before you did this, you're probably going to get gas out of here, so. There we go. Oh, that's nice. Ah. Oh, and I just ripped that hose. Okay, ready for the gas? Oh, that wasn't any. Good. Okay, and then show them back in there. Oops. There's these little black wraps in there. Yeah, there you go. Those guys, so you need to open those up. And this whole fuel hose is going to come out this left side. Alrighty, so now with your stock hose out of the way, grab your new fuel line, one of your little hose clamps. I mean, you could wait on the hose clamp, but you're going to take it and you're going to push that guy right up on that fuel selector knob. Get her on there real good, like so. Can't really tell now. And then put you one of these hose clamps on there. Get her up in there. And use your needle nose and suck them down. One little trick I should include from Mr. Pinella's Power Sports, I believe his name's Tommy. If you close these down just one click, it'll make it a lot easier, because it'll already be lined up when you go to push it in. Get her nice and deep in there and pinch her off nice and tight, because this is going to have fuel running through it, so you don't want a gas leak here. So there you go, there she is installed, as tight as she'll go. Now you're going to take the other end of your hose and try to run it back that exact same path, get it back in that little clamp there, and have it poking out this side. So there she is, clamped up. Try to follow that stock trajectory as much as you can. Make sure you get back into this clamp. Come back out right there. Get everything back inside that clamp and close her up. Next thing you're going to need, take your fuel pump, and it's going to get screwed directly into the lid of your airbox. This is the pulse part of the pump, so this is what's going to be pulling the vacuum from the valve cover. We're going to plumb into that hole, and there's going to be a hose that runs to this, and that's basically what's going to actuate I assume there's a diaphragm in here. Anyways, this is going to be your gasoline input, and this will be your gas output. So it'll come from your tank or your external tank into here. While the piston's moving up and down, it's going to create a vacuum, and it's going to suck gasoline through here, and it's going to push it out this way. So when you go to install it, Mr. Tom suggests that you mount it with this pointing up just a little bit. So go get yourself 2 screws, and yeah, I'll be back. Alrighty, so there she is all installed. I forgot to put the 2 screws on the list, so I'll try to remember to do that. Tom calls for 2 3/4 by 10 screws. I just had some oddball ones sitting around the house. I just ran in there real quick. Just be careful that you don't drill into something important behind that. Anyways, on the next part of it, here's your original one that you pulled off of that fuel selector. There's this relief sleeve that needs to be pushed back up. You see that hose that's moving? That goes to the carburetor. So you really want this piece, this relief piece, to go in between this kind of pinch point. And so basically get that slid up, and then what you're going to do is you're going to cut this formed piece off, and it's going to go onto your output of the fuel pump. So the fuel pump will send gasoline to the carburetor. So I'm going to go ahead and do that and put the camera down. So just a quick correction on that. In Tom's video, he had this sleeve would slide up and down. He was working on a 3100. This one's a 34, so I'm not sure if that's different. But this sleeve on mine actually goes all the way back into the carburetor, so there's nothing for me to slide. So I'm just going to cut it and hook it on. All right, there she is with the hose on. With that sleeve on there, it helps keep that hose right there from kinking up. So I don't know if you can see there, but I got a nice sweeping angle to it. And then you could have put this on beforehand, might have made it easier, but I'm gonna get her on there, slide her down, and tighten it down. So I'm gonna make a quick correction on mine anyways. So this is the hose that is coming from that fuel selector switch that I ran underneath these wires. And watching the video, it looks like it's gonna make more sense if I back it out and run it behind all this stuff, because it needs to come out over the top of the air box, and we're gonna cut it basically right at this, and you want that to be a nice sweeping piece of hose also. So I'm gonna go ahead and reroute that. So next thing we're gonna do is we're gonna build this. This is basically gonna replace that reed valve that we just bent back. So what you're gonna need is you're gonna need some of your fuel hose, your barbed T, your PCV valve, or your vacuum check valve, I guess. Blow, put it up to your mouth, blow through it, see which way the flow is, and then I just marked it with a paint pen. And you'll need this came off the fuel selector that we cut off earlier. You basically just want this little 90. So yeah, I'm gonna try to build it real quick and see how she goes. Okay guys, so here she is. I cut about 1 inch of that fuel hose and put it on this side of that barb T, and then on the other side I did about 1.5 inches. You just got to make sure that you got enough room in that hose for this nipple and that nipple to go in all the way. And then, like I said, put it up to your mouth, figure out which way it's blowing. So my flow is this way, and it won't let it go that way. So basically what's going to happen is this is going to go into that valve cover, and it's going to allow you to pull air, and it's not going to let air go back. So just make sure you want the air going this way. Alrighty, so there's that built up. Now you take this piece that you cut, and you're gonna cut you just want this little 90 just so it's looking down. I went to put mine in and realized that I need to get a little bit bigger hose because you want this to be a really good connection right here. So I'm gonna run down to the parts store and see if I can't find something with a larger outside diameter, make that fitting, make that fitment a little better. And then if you look there, I'm really tight on my on my clearance here. I'm not sure if there's something different about how Tom did his, but he's got a lot better clearance than I do, but I'll make it work. So since I really don't have any clearance over here, I'm going to go ahead and just decide to leave it with that. Push it in there tight enough with that barb, with that hose on top of it, and that'll make a good seal. So I think I'm just going to leave it like that. And there she is with the little 90 put on it. Just like that. Alright, so I just got back from the store, got a little bit bigger fuel hose, and it's still not quite big enough. So what is that, 4.4? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and I'm just going to use that breather hose that came out of here, and I just shoved the smaller hose inside here. I'm just going to put a hose clamp on it and slide her on there, tuck it back in that way, and then I just have this buried with the fitting in there, so it's got a nice tight fit. So I'm sure that'll work fine. I'm sure if I would have looked at that parts list a little better, I would have told me the outside diameter of that hose, but here we are. So alrighty, so here we are. This piece was a little too big to get one of these hose clamps on, so I just went ahead and just slid it on. I mean, that's plenty tight. And you just plumb that back into the air box there. That way it's getting filtered air to come in here. And then we're gonna run to your to that fuel pump. We're gonna run a line from here up and over and into the vacuum side of it. Okay, so here she is all set up. Off the top of this T, you're gonna run your pulse line through, let's see here, the top of here, come out on this back side. All right, and you're gonna come down. This is the pulse port of the fuel pump. What you do is just give it a nice arch if you can. Back up in there. And then just kind of mark it with your fingers where you're going to cut it. And then go ahead and cut her. Okay, and then you could slide that on right now, but according to his video, it's a little easier if you leave it out of the way for the time being. The next part that you need is your other 1/4 inch barb tee. And you need to take the line that is not your pulse hose line, right? This is the one that we just ran and I just cut. We are not using that one. We are coming in to this one. Okay, and you're going to take one end of that barb and push it in. Okay, and you can pause it. Okay, so the next part of this is hooked up to your fuel selector over there. Now you need to cut a piece of hose that's short enough to connect the inlet side of this pump, not the pulse, but the inlet side, and this part of the barb. Because what's going to happen, let's see, I cut that too long. This is going to hook up like that, and this will go out here to your external fuel tank once we get it set up. So I'm going to pull this back off, and I'm going to cut it just a little shorter so that way that lines up better. So I went ahead and I trimmed that up, and I cut a little piece of hose that I'm going to try to fish on here. It needs to connect these 2 points. Right? So let's see how she goes. There we go. That's how it should look just about. And kind of look ahead and see where your other one's pointing. Mine's kind of out over here, but I'm sure we can make it work. So that's what that part should look like. Alrighty, so here she is all hooked up. Got clamps on each one of these connections. It is a vacuum right here. You know, it's a suction, so in theory you'd be sucking air instead of leaking gasoline. But you know, if it sees gas, I would just put clamps on it. You may consider moving this a little lower and over, kind of see how mine's like pointing straight into this wall. I think I'll be able to get it so it doesn't kink, but for you guys who are watching this next time, maybe slide this whole unit over and down just a little. That way you don't get such a kink in it. And then once you got that on, don't forget you can slide your vacuum line on real quick, and then we will move on to connecting this bad boy to the outside of that. Alrighty, so now the next step is to hook into that T right here. run your excess all the way out here, and then you're going to cut a section in there somewhere where it's easy to get to install your fuel filter. And if you see, there is a direction of flow on this. So this fuel filter is going to sit in there with the gasoline flowing this way, because you're going to have your external fitting out here. You're going to put that in line, and that is the direction that the gasoline is going to flow. So cut you a little section out and get her tied up. So before I went ahead and cut that to put the fuel filter in, I actually went ahead and drilled the outside of the cover. I used a little smaller bit to get it started, and then the biggest one I got is a 1/2 inch, and I was actually able to, kind of had to thread it into the plastic, but it's a pretty tight fit. And you want that in there facing down. Then I'm going to grab some of that yellow tape, and I'll tape that up. Hopefully I can get some tape on there. And then I will grab this other fitting, and it will get threaded on the other side, and then I can kind of figure out where I want to put my fuel filter. Okay, so there she is. I went ahead and just wallered it out a little bit more with that 1/2 inch and got it to get in there. I couldn't get that Teflon tape on. But I was able to get this. If you guys get the same size as me, this is a 17 socket, and I think I used a 3/4 on the other side. You just want to snug that up real good. Just be careful, because brass is soft, and you're messing with plastic too. You'll squish the plastic. But now I'm gonna run the other end of this hose through here and hook up this connection, and So just a quick pro tip while I was trying to shove this on here, because it's a pretty tight fit. This piece that this door hangs on, you could just pop, it just slides right out. They're little rubber holders, and you just slide it right out. So, you saw me fumbling around with it, and you just move the whole thing out of the way. Okay, so I finally got this sucker on. I used a little bit of WD-40 because it's so hard to push on there. Just use a little WD-40, just a little, just to get that guy to slide. I imagine motor oil or something might be better for it, but that's what I put on, and we'll see if this hose clamp even wants to snap over that. Alrighty, we got her on now, so we can come back over here and figure out where we want to put that inline fuel filter. Alrighty guys, so there's a fuel filter installed. You might play with it a little more, maybe put it in a little different spot than I did, but this will work for what I got. Definitely suggest getting a little more fuel hose than 5 feet. I made some mistakes, made some cuts, and this is a little shorter than what I was envisioning, but you know what? I think it'll work. So, about ready to fire it up. Let's see if she wants to work. Before you do that though, I would highly suggest just going back through. Let me see if I can turn my flash on. Make sure you got hose clamps on all your connections. So there's the first one I started with. She ran back up around there. Again, your vacuum line, you don't really need one on, but everything that sees gasoline, like that one's got one, and then up there on the T, you'll be able to see it. Got one on each of those connections, so we're good there. And then we got this one here, that one there, and this one going out to here. So again, for those of you guys who aren't familiar with these marine style tanks, I guess this is pretty standard. I'm not familiar with them, so I'll just show it in the video. Here's your little primer hand pump. It's got flow on it, so you want to be going from the tank to the generator. So we got, where's that? There we go. So you got flow there. So these little connectors just pop on this tank. Turn it up a little. Oops. Okay, so you have to open that when you go to push it on there. But anyways, that's your connection there. And this other end of it will come right here on the end of that. Oops. Get her on. There we go. Nice tight fit. And so when you do this, what happens is your on-off here becomes when it's on the off position, that's your external tank that you'll be pulling from, because basically you're shutting the gas off from here, right? Just like you would if there was no external tank. You turn it off, the gas stops coming from here, and it'll start pulling from your tank. So, and then if you need to run your, internal tank, you just turn that on. So, I believe that's it. So we're gonna kind of half put it back together, make sure nothing leaks, and yeah, I'll let you see how that goes. So I went ahead and I got it running off the internal tank right now. I had to put some gas in there because I drained the gas and I pulled it like 10 times, didn't even realize there was no gas in it. Make sure you got gas in it. Then give it a couple pulls. It takes a little bit to get that fuel in the system, and once it gets in the system, man, it fires right up. So I'm gonna shut this off and I'm gonna switch it over to the external fuel tank, see what she does. Alrighty, here she is running on the external tank. It takes quite a bit of pumping for this bad boy to get it, primed. Make sure you got your fuel switched to off. That way this valve shuts and it's allowed. You can build pressure up there to force it into the pump. I would suggest running it for a little bit, making sure you don't have any gas leaks. Yeah, everything seems to be running just fine. Nope. I just hope this helps somebody out there who's nervous about doing this, and yeah, if you guys got any questions or anything, just leave a comment or something, and I'll get back to you. Just one more quick thing in case you weren't keeping track when you were pulling stuff apart. The longer of these bolts, right, you got a shorty and a long one. The long ones go in the side here, and the shorties go in the top. All right, guys, so here's the finished product in action. I was having a little bit of difficulty getting her going. She was running kind of rough, so a couple things that I figured out. When you first hook it up, it's probably best to have the tank and the generator somewhat at the same level. I had the generator way higher than the tank, and it was having a real hard time. When you pump that bulb, it really doesn't take a lot of pressure. You'll feel it kind of stiffen up a little bit, and don't give it any more than that, because if you give it more than that, it's going to force gas into the carburetor, and it's actually going to go out the overflow and drain into the inside of that generator there on the plastic floor. So yeah, just make sure your gas is in the off position, pump her up. I'm pretty sure if you have your gas in the on position and you start pumping it, you'll start filling the tank on that. So if you do that long enough, you probably overflow that. But anyways, just give it some time to get the air and stuff run out of it. Got it plugged into my brother's AC unit in his RV, and yeah, so we're gonna give her hell, see what she does, and like I said, I just hope this video helps somebody.